Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. We are back here with Amy Stolberg. Excited to have her on the show as a private psychotherapist and life coach based out of Rochester, New York. She's here helping so many in all these different areas. And we're going to go deep today into more that she can help us with. And let's have her introduce herself. Hi, Amy.
Good morning, Jill. Good morning, everyone. Amy Stolberg. You can get me at amyspearlsofwisdom.com. That will lead you right to my website. I wanted to come and just share a couple pearls of wisdom today. We've talked about some specific things in the past that had to do with psychotherapy, a little bit of life coaching. And I thought today maybe I'd dive a little deeper, just based on some things that have, come up in my practice lately. So what I want to put out there to everybody is question everything, imagine anything. And I say that because I touched on in the past about how we kind of take in what's been given to us, whether that, be what society has taught us, our parents, our teachers. And I want people to think bigger. And I say that across the board, whether that be in the psychotherapy element as well as the life coaching. With our mental health being as it is right now in this country, the general population being about 25% of general population have mental health issues. About 60% of college age students are suffering with mental health issues. And within that 60%, the majority of that are young women as well. But I want people to think about the broader picture, because clearly something isn't working. Something's not working for us. And, it's affecting our mental health. I want people to think about the things that they have come to believe as truths, whether that be something they learned growing up, whether that be something they were taught along the way, whether it just seems to be the prevalent social norm and you never questioned it before. And that could be anything from your personal stuff, from your career or your relationships, or the bigger stuff like drug culture or mass incarceration. And there's these ideas out there that people just kind of absorb, and whether that be because that's what the people in their home talk about, people at work talk about, you hear on the news, you believe it's culture. And I want people to remember what I've said in the past, is that it doesn't really matter where we were born, what the color of our skin is, what language we speak, our personal preferences. The most common, life experience is the life experience, and that is universal across the globe. And, pain is pain, hurt is hurt, happiness is happiness. But it's very different when you look at how we treat certain mental health issues or goals and career stuff than in other countries. People in other countries may not see their mental health as an issue, or you wonder why they don't have the numbers that we have. And it has to do with perception and how you perceive the situation that you're in as being traumatic or being life altering. And I want people to question what they believe on a bigger scale. I've talked about the relationship factors, what young women believe, and they don't even realize that it's something they believe. It's just something that has been, they've observed it, or people talk about it, how you should be in a relationship and the roles that you just take on because that's the norm.
Yeah.
Whether it be the bigger things like career, why is it that men make so much more than women for the same career, the same education, the same experience? How does that happen, and how do we allow that to continue to happen?
Mm-hmm.
And it has to do with belief, what we believe, whether that belief is that you deserve something better, you deserve something less, somebody else deserves better or less, as well as on the bigger scale. I've referenced the drug culture, and if you don't have somebody in your life who is on drugs or has been affected by drugs, then you're not really looking deep enough. It's not just the person, and we chastise the person. It's the family, it's their children, it's the possibly the spouse. It's, that rolls itself out into bigger areas of society, and how, those children, those families survive that, situation in their family. Mass incarceration, people get, get on their bandstand about what's right. um, lock people up for 25 years. And, I question, does somebody learn their lesson after 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, any more than if you keep them 25 years? But in the wake of, locking large amounts of people up for things that maybe at one point were illegal, but now are legal, but we've changed our mindset about that. In the wake of, taking mass people away, we're leaving women trying to maintain a household, working 2 or 3 jobs. We're leaving children that don't have an extra parental figure. I highly doubt, and this is my personal opinion, I highly doubt that keeping somebody 10, 15, 20 years for something they've done is going to impact them any more than those first, let's say, 5 years. And in the process, we're allowing children to not have the support that they need, and in fact, continue to maybe replicate similar behaviors that got their parent there in the first place. And as a society as a whole, it's not serving us. The mental health of everybody is unraveled across the country. We have to stop and think, why? What is it that we're doing that has not been working? It's not just about COVID. Mental health, was was not good before COVID, and people didn't want to talk about it. It started to get talked about a little bit more when people came home from, the services and weren't treated well. And, people in sports started talking about their mental health. That didn't just happen. That's been happening for generations, and people just don't want to talk about it. It wasn't until we had this huge impact of COVID that the whole, world was affected, and people started to unravel. Then people had to start talking about it, and now it's a priority for those who are in the fields of, mental health, whether that be psychotherapy or life coaching as well. It's not a new topic. We've been fighting for, people to get support for, generations. You can go back in history, different names, different titles to the job, but it was there, and people were in need. I just really want people to stop and think about what they believe to be truth. And if there are things that they can do, make those changes. Fight on a macro level. I do believe in the butterfly effect. If you do one small thing, it reverberates throughout the universe. And, that might touch another person that then touches another person, and so on. Not for people to pretend like this doesn't affect me. It's not in my home. It's not in my backyard, but it is. It is. People put on blinders to many of these things, and I just wanted to raise awareness to that as well.
And Amy, remind us how we could reach you.
Amy's Pearls of Wisdom.com. AMYSPERLSOFWISDOM.com.
Perfect. And just for those new time listeners today, I know we're on a roll with a great conversation here, and thank you for bringing this up. But just a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind sharing your credentials and your background.
I am a licensed clinical social worker. I have a master's degree in social work. I've been in the field for 25 plus years, working with anybody from age 5 to 85. I've had some long-term clients that have stayed with me so long after stabilizing their mental health that they've stayed with me for life coaching. I'm one of 5 children born to the same 2 parents, lower socioeconomic, who, were less than perfect parents. And I think that had an impact differently on each of us. And I was, the second youngest, so I observed a lot. And, I always seemed to be the one that people would come to when I was growing up, when I was in school amongst my friends to talk about. And maybe being in that position, I, became an empathic person and was open to understanding what other people's pains were. and giving suggestions to, maybe what I've experienced. And throughout my practice, I've been so fortunate to be privy to so many people's life experiences. And I use those experiences to help other clients, whether that be the mental health stuff or the life coaching stuff. Clearly, not everything that a person learns in a book is what's going to work for each individual. It's so individualized. I'm a very eclectic person in my practice. Not everybody starts at the same place. Not everybody has the same goals. It's
Yeah.
not my job to, you know, force an outcome to someone. It's my job to help guide them in the way that they want to go and do it in a safe and productive way.
Got it. Well, thank you so much. Amy Stolberg here today. And I know you bring up really great things, like as far as the whole pay gap and disparity with us women and working extra hard to support our families. And yeah, it's like, we're waiting for that pay gap to get a little smaller, and it's starting to, but still those stereotypical, just reminds me of last night. I actually went out to dinner and I met all these people that were at the bar, and all these men who are so successful. And then I was talking to a woman, and I'm like, how does he have millions of dollars in a house in Utah? And I'm like, I always find the men out there talking about what they have, and then I see the woman like, why so many men so much more successful than us? And I felt like a little like annoyed by it. Like, how did he get all this money? How? And then I don't ever, I rarely find a woman that is so successful like that. And I was like, wow, how do these people do that? Is it because they're really smarter than us, or just because they're men? Or, but I'm like always intrigued by when I hear people are so successful. It's mostly men. I don't really know any super successful women, to be honest with you. And last night proves that there was all these men and they were talking about this and that. And I'm like, wow, it got me thinking, well, they're like, what do you do? I'm like, well, I'm just a mom, broadcaster, whatever. And, but feeling like a little inferior, like I'm a woman. Why can I ever have that success? Not that success is measured by what you have, but it is by dollars and things. And they're like, oh, I have a house here, I have a house there. And I'm like, I'm just trying to pay for one house still.
Well, I think that's part of, what I'm, asking people to question is that, the society as it is, there's a benefit for men, white men, to keep the system as is because it has served them well.
Yeah.
The boys club, keep it
Yeah.
within the boys club. Don't let anybody else and don't let a woman and don't let somebody different in because they may lose some of the control or the power. And I think that crosses all the borders, whether you be a woman or whether you be a different, color or culture, whether that be somebody who has found themselves, crossing the line of the law
Yeah.
and, going to court and being imprisoned for something. It's the culture as it is, what we've, breathed in as
Yeah.
truth and belief is really askew, and people really need to, for the benefit of society as a whole, really stop and question that. um it if you bring it back to the micro, your relationships, the things that women do that serve men, and that's very stereotypical, but there's a society that sets up certain patterns that people don't question because they believe that's how they're supposed to be. And I know I've spoken, before about this cycle that gets set up with young women, and as far back as like they're dating and mating and how they present themselves, it's always to please and appease their partner, instead of them being themselves and really investing in who they are. And, that's to please and push somebody else's agenda. Women don't give enough credit for their strengths, their successes. Um, the society as it stands, it serves certain groups well to chastise those who use drugs, chastise those who have found themselves crossing the line of the law.
Yeah.
And I've reminded people in the past there's a very fine line between
Oh, yeah.
somebody who's crossed that line and broken the law and those people who say that they're there to maintain the law and legal rights and in the justice system. if you take me there, I'm going to go off on that because it is not a justice system. It is not just. And there's so much to that whole system that is not fair, is not it's not just. But if you're on one side of that line, you believe that you should keep people on the other side of that line until you find yourself or somebody close to you crossing that line, and then you want it changed. In the country, we've got a lot of stuff going on about immigration, and people have strong thoughts about immigration, in part because of how media has portrayed people coming to this country as less than, or wanting to take something that they have. The reality is the majority of those people coming to this country are looking for a better life, a safer life, a life that offers them the ability to just survive. They're not here to bring drugs and kill people and take from other people. But if you're one of those people who have all those privileges, of course you don't want anyone to think that they could have what you have. It might make you a little bit less. It's outstanding when you think about, what is it, the top 1, 2, 3% of the country that owns what, 90% of the wealth. That's disgusting. There's people, the rates of poverty and homelessness is so high. People find affordable housing, but yet those people who've got that huge percentage of the wealth don't want to let go even of a percentage of their wealth to help those people who don't have it. And it's not often because they're unmotivated or unwilling. They're just not capable. I know somebody who lives in another state than New York, who needed to change housing. They required that person to have 3 times the rent, and have that 3 times the rent and disposable income to be able to get into that apartment. Who has 3 times that? But yet people, once they get in those places, can't afford to maintain those places. But the bar is so high, people can't afford to do it. So what are people doing? You're putting more people together, people combining their incomes, multi-generational families. That heats up the pot. You're going to have more domestic violence. You're going to have more mental health issues, more homelessness, more hopelessness, more drugs, more mass incarcerations, more kids raising themselves. I mean, it's a huge thing. And why? Because we don't, as human beings, as individuals, don't stop and question some of the things that we've been taught as far as humanity, just humanity.
Well, also listening to this, it's you're bringing up some very interesting points, and to help people out there to know they're not alone. It's always a good thing, and in the line of work that you're doing, it goes to show. But we are not alone. We could be stronger. We could do this. We could do anything. And I feel like we're given this one chance, one path here on Earth. You have the right to choose that path, and you could change the path and direction, even though you're feeling hopeless or you're feeling this is part of the motivational process that you bring to the table, especially coaching people. And by the way, do you specifically coach women or do you do men as well?
I do men as well. The majority is women, and my heart of hearts is, some of that disparity amongst, men and women is with the women,
Yeah.
because, I have that knowledge and experience, but I definitely have men, and the men that I work with, what I'm doing is trying to help them open up their eyes to the women in their life, or the way they affect the, culture, or their careers, or their family, their, as a whole. That there are things that men are doing that perpetuate the system, the dysfunction, don't even realize it. And so a lot of the coaching I do with the men is helping them to see what's right in front of them, hear what's being said to them, understand the whole picture, and not from their myopic view. um you know we have um an obligation to do better, not just for ourselves and not just for the people that we are closest to, but for society as a whole. something that came across my eyes this week, and it's been there before, and it just reminded me is, what would you do if you knew you had 1 week or 1 month or 1 year left to live? What would you change? What would be important to you? And I think that is important because none of us really know when our alarm is going to go off. But when it really comes down to
Mhm.
it, if you had limited time left on this earth, what would you want to leave behind? What would your legacy be? What would you want to be known as? And the reality is, what do you really take with you? So, focusing on the important stuff, the relationships, perpetuating good and kind and success in the world, not on a myopic, viewpoint, but for, society as a whole. That's where we all connect. We are all human, and the rest matters less. So people need help, find help. If you like how things are, keep on keeping on. And if you don't, do something different.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing this. Amy Stolberg, we still have 5 minutes left in the show. What other insight did you want to give your listeners here today?
If people are looking for somebody to help them with either their mental health or coaching different aspects of their own personal life, whether it be relationships, career, health, um, don't make it a one-stop shop. Find the person that you connect with. Find somebody that you feel like you could develop a good rapport with. As a person who does psychotherapy and coaching, I want people to feel comfortable. And if it's not me, by all means, there's wonderful people out there, other coaches and other psychotherapists. Find what makes you feel comfortable. Don't stop with the one person that you might have been, the name you may have been given, or the one that's closest to your home. Look around, shop. Having that trust and developing that rapport with your person is the most important. And by all means, if you feel like you've come to a stalemate with your therapist or your life coach, then let them know that and move on, peacefully move on. Because life coaches don't want you to stay and be stagnant. We come into this field to help people, and we can only take people as far as we can go personally. And that may be, not as far as you want to go. And by all means, then, go find somebody else to help you make that next move, that next stage and phase of your life. It's extremely important that you have that connection with your life coach, with your therapist, so that you can become the best version of you. I've said, with a little grit and grace, it can be done. And having somebody there to help, support you, cushion you when you fall, and motivate you when you move on up is really important. So if you want someone, you need someone, find someone, the right
She's your
someone.
girl. All right. Tell us how we can reach you.
Amy's Pearls of Wisdom, AMYSPEARLSOFWISDOM.com. Amy's Pearls of Wisdom.
Perfect. We love getting these pearls of wisdom, and a great conversation today, as usual. And thank you for being here.
You're very welcome. Everybody take care. Lots of health and wellness.
Thank you so much. Same to you and to all of our listeners. We'll be right back with more. Don't go anywhere.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.